Hey legends, massive episode for you today. We have Paul Taylor on. This man is a guidance and education book on just how to perform at your absolute best in life. He's formerly a part of the British military, a neuroscientist, a physiologist, a nutritionist, and also an author of award-selling book, Death by Comfort. This man, just to give you a bit of insight, went for heart checks recently and got told he's going to need open heart surgery. He went home and wrote on a piece of paper and put up on his fridge, a worthy opponent. He talks about the resilience you need day to day. He talks about the societal ways of how we're the most addicted, depressed, overweight, pretty much medicated that human history has ever been, for probably our most advanced and most settled era of where we're at in civilization. He has a lot of fundamentals around how to just perform at your best, talks about why exercise is so important for the brain, why cold therapy, why hot therapy is essentially stress relieves for our body, that when tough things come our way, we tend to shrug them off a little bit easier than we would otherwise. We go through how to perform better. We go through some of the science that he's researched and he's backed to just help you perform and challenge your brain to function at your most optimal. I mean, it's an incredible episode. I'm sure you guys are going to get a lot out of this, and this is definitely one to send to a friend who may need it. So let's get into it. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of the Unlaced podcast. As I always say, if you are new here, thank you for turning up. And if you come back again, I absolutely love you. I am going to stop you if you are on the audio platforms. If you have listened to the show before, please give us a review and rating. It helps us get up in the algorithms, get some feedback. And also, if you're feeling friendly, to give us 5 stars. We'd love you for that forever. And if you are watching on YouTube, please hit the subscription button or the notification bell if you have not already, just so you're updated when we upload a video, as we are right now. I want to go into last week's episode quickly because it was a massive one with Mac Andrew, a Gold Coast Sun. He's only 20 years old, played 41 games in AFL, and yet he has the highest contract, or the biggest contract in AFL history. Very much has his feet firmly on the ground, but born in Egypt, family fled South Sudan and ended up in Australia with what he's achieving. It's just such an incredible story that I could not share it for those that haven't heard it. But today's a very different speed of a podcast, but one that I would say is going to provide a lot of education and guidance for all those at home that just want to perform better, perform more optimally. And it's going to be backed by some science today, some study, and really a man that is tried and tested with performing every single day as a human being. That man that I have with me today, his name is Paul Taylor. He was formerly a part of the British Navy, worked in the military, of course, a presenter, an incredible presenter, might I add, neuroscientist, a physiologist, and a nutritionist. So there's going to be a lot to unpack. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Absolute pleasure to be here, mate.
Yeah, no. Well, how are you going, mate, in general? You're looking fit as a fiddle, might I add.
Yeah, look, I'm going pretty well. I'm just juggling stuff at the minute because I'm doing my PhD in psychology, which I've been wanting to do for years, and I'm right in the weeds of it. So I'm data analyzing at the minute. So right. I'm trying to stick needles in my eyes to make it a bit more fun.
How much book reading you must have done to be on the level you are.
I've read a lot of books, but a lot more research journals.
Oh, so, right.
Yeah, I like to call myself a pracademic, which means I like to read all the geeky academic research and then turn it into practical tools and solutions that people can use on a daily basis to improve their lives.
Right.
So I've always got my head in a journal or in a book if it's a reasonable book.
Has that always been a natural thing for you? Because I find with myself, I always find reading helps me, but I do have to force my head to go to a book. Do you have that? Do you have that battle at all, or is that something?
No, look, I'm just very interested. I'm very curious about the human body and the human brain. So I always get sucked in. In fact, I spend too much of my time reading research articles and working out what to do with them. But I've watched very little TV. It's more geeky stuff.
Yeah, well, I like that. I try not to watch as much TV now as well. But I knew I'd forget something as well when I introduced you. But you're also an author of a multiple award-winning book, Death by Comfort, which is kind of probably a little bit of a stream of what's really going to be spoken about today. But I mean, that in itself is pretty incredible. I want to know sort of the why of maybe compiling all your life in it, or sort of life education as such into a book. Why that was.
Yeah. So look, my main business is a corporate speaker. And so I was always talking at conferences or talking to audiences, and then they come up and they go, have you got a book? You need to read a book. Write a book. Have you got a book? Have you got a book? And then eventually I went, right, I need to write a bloody book just to stop people saying, have you got a book? And me saying no. So I actually, I wrote the book and I actually really enjoyed the process because a lot of it was in my head anyway. So it was just getting that down on paper was an interesting process, and then just refining it and making sure that the message had a nice flow to it. I think was pretty key. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm actually starting to write another one now.
Oh, is it quite time consuming? Because I assume the amount of time it can take someone to read a book, let alone having to think of all you've just said.
Yeah, look, it depends on what type of book you write, right? Yeah. So I like to write evidence-based stuff, which means that everything I'm writing in there has to have a scientific reference to it. So actually the hardest bit and the longest bit was compiling all of the references, the academic references at the back of the book in the chapters, right? And then occasionally I forget one and then, the editor goes through it and goes, oh, you need to find me the journal reference for that. And I'm like, Jesus, where did I put that one? Right? So that was actually the most painstaking bit.
Yeah, well, the presenter bit I'll probably talk on because the content, so I've watched quite a bit of you actually speak, and I'm quite interested because you're quite fascinated by the brain, as am I, without me having the knowledge that you do, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you today. But it's more just the way you interact with the audience. Like you always play a little trick with them at the start to like get their brain firing or maybe shake up them being connected to the previous speaker and so forth. Can you just touch on that for the audience that obviously haven't seen that, why you do that? And
yeah, it's just really to get people present because, often I'll speak at conferences and people have been sitting down for hours. And we know when you're sitting down for hours, your brain energy is pretty low. Your ability to focus and concentrate goes. So I just like to shake things up. I do little tricks to get people with their mind in the room, or I often get people out of their seats sprinting on the spot for 30 seconds and running around high-tailing people just to kind of lift the energy a little bit and wake people up. Because when I talk, I got a shitload of content that I give to people. Yeah. So I need to make sure that they're engaged.
Yeah, fair. Well, and also I guess like the actual art of presenting and public speaking. Things like this, well, when I used to know about this, it used to be the second biggest fear after death in some regards. But was that something you've built up over time with training as such?
Yeah, look, I think my time in the military had a big impact on that because I was an officer in the military, so you're always having to present stuff, right? So I just find that then I had a bit of a natural bent to it. And when I did my first corporate gig 17, 18 years ago, I really wasn't nervous because I've been used to presenting to senior officers and stuff like that. Right. So that kind of came a little bit naturally. And I'm an Irishman and we can talk the hind leg of a lot, So that bit actually came reasonably comfortably to me. It's when you get to the bigger audience that I would occasionally I'd get a little bit nervous, but now there's kind of no nerves at all. It's just a bit of excitement. It's kind of what I do. Can you
talk to me just about, I guess, growing up in Ireland, but also what was the reason why you wanted to join the military?
So I grew up in Northern Ireland from a mixed marriage.
Do you class yourself as like Northern Ireland and Ireland?
So this is it. This just gets to the core of it, right? So I was brought up in Northern Ireland from a mixed marriage, which has a different connotation than anywhere else in the world. So it was Protestant Catholic. So my mum was a Protestant. She married my dad, who was a Catholic in the 1960s. That was massively taboo. She had to actually change religion to get married. Jeez. And my grandfather didn't talk to her for years because she married a Catholic. So we were brought up as Catholics, but we always lived in Protestant neighborhoods because my parents didn't want us to grow up bigoted, and that's kind of the only way. So, when you go to school through a Protestant neighborhood wearing a Catholic uniform, it's reasonably resilience building over time, right? Yeah. But so I grew up as a kid, and half my mates were Catholics and half were Protestants, which was reasonably unusual. And then, I'd done a degree and I was about to do my master's in sports science. And then I thought, I actually want to do something a little bit more interesting and exciting. And I had at university, I joined the OTC, the Officer Training Corps. So it's like kind of like a part-time job, but it's for people who think they might want to join the military. Right. But it was really cool, and that's really what sparked my interest. So I thought actually, no, that's what I want to do.
Oh, it's interesting. That's part. I mean, people at home may not know, but that's insight into the rivalry between Celtic and Rangers from a football point of view. I mean, it's literally two different religions.
And if you have ever been, that is the best sporting atmosphere that I have ever witnessed to an Old Firm game. I don't know if you've ever been to one.
No, I haven't. I've heard about it.
Man,
right?
it is bonkers. There are 60,000 people it's just chanting the entire time. Like it's a cauldron. They have to come in from opposite sides of the city. And then they have to leave from opposite sides of the ground. But that was the last sporting event I was at. And then I came here and went to an AFL game at the MCG, and you could hear a frigging pin drop.
Oh, there we go.
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And I've just alienated half the audience there.
I do talk about this all the time in regards to, I'm like, the Colts and Collingwood, I know they get 100,000 people and they do swear and there is riffraff, but I'm like, there's something different. What I wanted to be a professional footballer from walking into my first Premier League game, just because the atmosphere, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
If anybody who goes regularly to the AFL, you just got to go to a Premier League game.
Yeah, right.
Almost any game. and the atmosphere, it's orders of magnitude different.
Yeah, it's just very true. Very true. Well, so the military, just making that move into that space, I mean, can you just talk to me about what that brings to you? Because I assume there's a huge level of discipline, maybe training, and then obviously being around that space. Naturally, there's always confrontation one way or another in what you're doing and why you're doing it, which must be resilience building in itself, I can imagine.
Yeah. So basic military training is reasonably challenging, but you're in there. The mateship, I think, was the thing that I've really taken away from the military, and it's the thing that I miss is that mateship. I mean, I'm actually going to go back to the UK just before Christmas, and I'm catching up with a bunch of Navy mates. Wow. And I left 20 years ago. So, and then I went through combat survival and resistance to interrogation training, which was 10 days of pretty hardcore stuff that they're no longer allowed to do. And that was the thing that really sparked my interest in stress and resilience. Because I had already had a master's degree in sports science before I joined the military. And I really understood the science of exercise, right? That exercise is only good for you because it's a stressor. And that stress stimulates adaptive responses in the body that makes you bigger, faster, stronger. And after I did combat survival and resistance to interrogation training, about a week later, something happened to me that I would normally have found reasonably stressful. And it was just like water off a duck's back. And then about a week later, something similar. And then I asked the few others who I knew who were on course, have you noticed something similar? And they all said yes. And that's when I realized that psychological and emotional stress can be exactly the same as that. That Friedrich Nietzsche, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And that's really the key that I have realized and then dug into the research around that a lot of resilience actually has to be earned. You can have all the self-care and self-compassion in the world, but when you get into really difficult situations, that ain't going to help you through, right? A lot of it is about doing hard stuff and stretching yourself and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is how we actually grow.
Right. It's interesting. One of my favorite football coaches ever used to have this saying. He always used to say, today, boys, you used to have this saying, HWWH. He goes, today hard work is what's going to win us the game. But he goes, for hard work, you've actually got to work hard. Yes. And everyone used to look around like that. And I thought, that's actually brilliant because, you can say it, but actually doing stuff to that level. And that's why I was interested to speak to you about today, because you always have this kind of saying that in today's society where the most depressed, the most obese, the most addictive, the most, I guess, I don't know, what else?
Medicated.
Medicated is the other one, right? For human civilization, which is probably as advanced as it's ever been.
Life is easier and better than it's ever been, yet we are going through what we can only describe as a twin physical and mental health crisis, right? It is now normal to be overweight or obese. And 22% of Australians have had a mental health issue in the last year. 40% of teenage girls have had a mental health issue in the last year. And the data is actually getting worse. So I believe a lot of the reasons for this is that we are ancient bodies and brains. We are a hunter-gatherer's genome that has been plonked into this modern environment that is not suitable for that genome. And that's where we're struggling. And then well-intentioned people, psychologists and other people have come in and said, we need to try and remove stressors from people, and that can actually make things worse.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you have this view that purely based off what you were saying, our ancestry were kind of subjected to more heat and more cold and more adversity, which made their kind of, stress, I guess, or stress propensity to actually be better off. So they could deal with situations better, but they're also happier probably in some regards.
This is all about the science of what's called hormesis. Right? So hormesis is exposure to stressors or toxins, which at high levels can kill you, but at low to moderate levels induce stress resistance, right? So we know things like exercise is a hormetic stressor, makes you bigger, faster, stronger. We know that cold exposure, heat exposure, sunlight exposure, they're all hormetic stressors. You do too much of them, they'll kill you, but you do just enough of them. There's actually an adaptive response that happens at a cellular level to all of these stressors called the cell danger response, right? And I geek out on this stuff. That basically what happens when you're exposed to any of those stressors, your cells activate this danger response that upregulates protective genes. So we get a massive upregulation of these protective genes that actually, it's basically going, oh shit, this is a stressor. I need to be prepared to deal with this in the future. So it makes you stronger and more resilient at a cellular level so that when that stress comes along again, you can actually deal with it. And then you even get stronger and stronger and stronger. So this is the issue with then, particularly bringing up kids and trying to bring up kids in a stress-free environment. You're robbing them of these ancient mechanisms. And they're actually what we call evolutionarily conserved, right? Which is a bit of a mouthful. What that means is we see that across evolutionary timelines and across species. Everything from fruit flies to worms to rodents, cats, dogs, primates, all respond to the stress of exercise, the stress of heat, the stress of cold by upregulating these ancient genes, these ancient protective mechanisms. And I think we're losing that ability with this life of comfort, where our environments are thermoneutral, where we don't friggin' exercise anymore. And if you don't exercise, you are destroying your biology. That's what I say to people. And it's not just the physical stuff. We know now there is what's called a cross-stressor effect, right? Not cross-dresser, that's what I used to occasionally do on nights out in the military, right? But cross-stressor is that if I regularly expose myself to the stress of exercise or the heat from a sauna or cold water, not only do I enhance my ability to deal with that stress, but I enhance my ability to deal with other types of stress, right? And that's key. We know, for instance, that people who regularly exercise can handle a psychological and emotional stress better because every time you're exercising or doing cold or heat exposure, you're training your stress response system globally, right? And I like this term now. I'm talking about this term called hardiness, not resilience, hardiness, right? And if people think about hardy, what pops into people's mind is toughness, right? Robustness. Hardy plants are ones that can endure harsh environments. And so I think we all need to be hardy, particularly because life is hard. And so we need to be hardy.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's almost like, I don't want to use the term soft, but the way civilization is now, it's enabled us
Soft underbelly, mate.
Yeah.
If you don't say it, I'll say it.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure you have said it, right?
Yes.
And even that was soft by me, right? There you go. But
commit, Jake. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. When I think of my own lowest moments and what I was interested, because I've been actually doing some research on this word or language, rumination, which you kind of speak about. And rumination, for those that don't know, it's pretty much constantly thinking about the bad.
Yeah.
And it's a high percentage of what actually causes depression for people. And you acknowledge that in what you speak about, and you say everyone has a gremlin and everyone gets thrown a shit sandwich up.
Yeah.
But it's actually doing the daily actions whilst having that emotion there. It's not acknowledging it, but it's also not living with it and not letting it affect you.
It's not letting it control you.
Yeah.
You know, the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, man is not disturbed by things, but rather the view that he takes of these things.
Yeah.
So I am a big fan of talking about your attention. And in Japanese psychology, which my wife's a practitioner of, they say that the most powerful thing in your life is what they call the flashlight of your attention, right? And as a neuroscientist, I love that because whatever you pay attention to, your brain commits cells to it. So it's not the fact that we have negative emotions or negative experiences. It's that for a lot of people, the flashlight of their attention is shone in their own heads for long periods of time. And they're struggling, right? They're struggling with their emotions. I shouldn't be feeling like this. They're ruminating over the past. I should have done this different. Why is this happening to me? They're also catastrophizing about the future. And they're just spending all this time in their own heads. And I use the concept of a gremlin, right? So the gremlin is all the negative stuff, the negative self-talk, the overthinking, the victim mentality, the self-critical voice, all that shit. Just call this your gremlin. The issue is not that you have a gremlin. The issue is that we pay too much attention to it.
Yeah.
And by paying attention to it, you energize this gremlin, right? Yeah. So for me, it's that attentional control and getting people to think about what I call their inner sage. That's like the wise mind or the best version of you, right? And I get people to actually do an exercise to create their sage and write down their character traits of what they're like when they're at their damn best, right? This is not a time for humility. And I get the people to think about your biggest achievements in your life because they almost always involve stress and discomfort.
Yeah.
So what character traits did you have to bring to that situation for you to achieve that? Write that shit down. That they are the character traits of your sage. And I always like to then get people to, when they catch themselves on with their gremlins in control, it's like, what would my sage do right now? So my sage is called Jev, J-E-V, named after three people I had huge respect for in history. J for Jim Stockdale, who was in the Vietnam War, spent 8 years in the Hanoi Hilton prison camp. E for Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, and V for Viktor Frankl, whose book I read as a 17-year-old, Man's Search for Meaning, had a profound impact on my life. So anytime I'm struggling or just need to get myself up, I say, what would Jeff do right now? Right. Oh. So that, you're just like all world-class athletes do that shit,
Correct,
right?
Right.
They have some form of a sage, their best self that they visualize, when they cross that line where they become their best selves. I think we need to all do that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, you speak about that quite a bit, particularly how hard do you think it is for, I'll probably rephrase this. I feel like if someone came to you and said, Paul, I'm not feeling good or I'm depressed or whatever, I feel like the way you talk about the brain and how the science behind how it functions optimally is you could probably write down exactly what those people aren't doing or incorporating in their life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you go through, I think I'm going to say it here, but this kind of seven daily rituals that you've got that encompass optimal performance and will probably help anyone feel or perform better.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us? I've heard you speak about it.
Yeah. So let's go through some of those things that are really important. So if we start from a fundamental level, right? So I said life is hard, but life is also friggin' awesome, right? There's just so much opportunity around. And so for me, you need to look after that one vehicle that you have to get through life, right? So I like to talk about a number of things that intersect to optimize your body and brain so that you are in the best condition to deal with life's challenges, right? So Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, said, we must all undergo a hard winter training and not enter into lightly that for which we have not prepared. And he was talking about life, right? So it's about being prepared for life. So for me, the most fundamental is exercise. Is just so critical because every time you exercise, there are these molecules called myokines that are released from your contracting muscle that have a positive impact on every single organ and every organ system in your body. And when you exercise, there's this neurosymphony going on in your brain of a whole heap of neurotransmitters, endorphins, endocannabinoids, serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, enkephalins are all being released to make your brain function better, right? And help you to handle situations. So daily exercises is absolutely key, as is sleep. You'll know, having been an athlete, sleep is a weapon.
Yeah.
And so many people have shithouse sleep hygiene, where they're on screens just before they go to bed, or they even had a bloody phone in their bedroom. And so I'm like, get your phone out of your bedroom, have a wind down routine for half an hour before you go to bed, get some mental stillness, do some breath work, do some yoga, just read a novel, any of those things that's going to create a bit of mental stillness. And then it's about nutrition. The major purpose of eating is to fuel your cells. And about half of all calories consumed in this country are ultra-processed shit. And it's killing us and it's killing our kids. But I like to get people to think about, what is this food doing for my ecosystem? And so I like to say to people, eat a low HI diet, where HI stands for human interference. If you can see it's been alive, eat it. Right. It's fine. If you can see this has never been alive, this Krispy Kreme donut has never run around on 4 legs, then it's in your treat food, right? So that 80-20 rule goes in conjunction with that. So, and then for me, the mindset stuff is critical, right? We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond, right? That's the key thing, is choosing how you respond. And when bad shit happens, viewing it as a challenge rather than a threat and a loss. Because if you go into that threat loss, it's like, woe is me, why is this happening to me? We start to become a victim. You start to ruminate, all of that stuff. And it releases cortisol, this major stress hormone that has a half-life of at least an hour. So even if you're just in that shithouse mindset for 10 minutes, an hour later, you're still going to have half that cortisol in your system. Whereas if you view something as a challenge, right, it activates your fight or flight response, and the stress chemicals, adrenaline and noradrenaline, have a half-life of a minute. So very quickly, that stressor is then gone and you're back to homeostasis.
Jeez.
So that mindset that we bring to bear is really critical. And I just reinforce to people, you can't choose what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond. Right. So those are things that are pretty critical. I think a cold shower, 30 seconds at the end of your normal shower. Like, people do this stuff, everybody does it, says that wakes your ass up.
Yeah,
right?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
And you know why? Because noradrenaline and dopamine spike with the cold shock response, right? And let's think about it. This is an ancient mechanism, this cold shock response. Dopamine is about goal-directed behavior and motivation, right? It's saying, Jake, get out of the friggin' water because it's going to kill us. It's cold, right? And noradrenaline is about focused attention and action, right? So those neurotransmitters, we can harness those to actually start our day motivated, focused, ready for action. And the other thing about the cold water exposure is it's also psychological, right? It's just about doing something hard to start the day, just sets you up with the right psychology. Right?
Yeah, that's what I found. One of the things, and it's interesting you speak about sleep. When I went to the Australian Institute of Sport as an athlete, we got sat down by, I guess, the head of the institute to spoke all the new athletes. And I was thinking they're obviously going to talk about, the importance of training, doing the extras, giving us examples of the past athletes. And he goes, the number one thing to do here to be the best is sleep. And
Boom.
Head on the pillow, he goes, you get head on the pillow. This guy, Barry Bonds, his name was. And that always stuck with me so much, that how important sleep actually was and the consistency of your sleep. Consistency just in general is obviously a big part of what you push and promote.
Yes.
I think you spoke about aligning like your sort of work to your life's purpose and so forth. With people that are sitting here going, I don't know what that looks like, or haven't found my purpose yet. I mean, do you have any actions or principles or things to actually, maybe someone does have their life's purpose, they don't know. Is there anything in that space that you can give some guidance?
Great quote from Seneca.
You've got a lot of great quotes, by the way. I actually, when I was looking at this podcast, I'm like, I've got to try not keep re-quoting what he says here, because there's so many little nuggets and dimes that you position.
Yeah. So let me give you a quote from. So when I talk about meaning and purpose, right? So Viktor Frankl says life has no meaning other than what you give it, right? There is no purpose fairy. All those people who are out there waiting for the purpose fairy to come along and dollop the purpose it ain't coming, right? You got to find your own, you got to create your own meaning.
Love that.
Right?
Yeah.
So Seneca, I think, has just given the best guidance for this. 2,000 years ago, he said, he was talking about purpose, and he says, every individual bears the responsibility to be of value to humanity. If possible, to benefit a large number. If not, to benefit a smaller group. And if that too seems unattainable, then to benefit their immediate community. But above all, they must prioritize self-growth and personal well-being. And I love the intersection of that, right? It kind of when I saw that, I'm like, shit, this is everything I stand for.
Yeah, right.
Because the Stoic philosopher said, the key to the good life, eudaimonia, right, is to actually be a good citizen and to be of benefit to others. That's all people need. Forget about that. Success in life is not running a multi-million-dollar startup and an orphanage in Nepal at the same time and curing world hunger, right? It is, how can you be of benefit to your little corner of the universe, right? That's really key, because when you look at all the research, that's the stuff that gives people this enduring, what we call flourishing, right? It's really critical. And it's that self-growth as well, feeling that I'm growing, that I'm contributing, that I'm a functioning member of a tribe, that I've got good social relationships. They're the things that give us this enduring flourishing or eudaimonia. Like happiness is this fleeting emotion that comes and goes, right? But the other thing I really like is what Seneca talked about, your self-growth and personal well-being. Because if you look after yourself, then you can be more effective at being better for other people, right? And it's that whole put your oxygen mask on first, right? So I always say to people, like start the day and think, what am I going to do today for my future self? Right. That's the other thing I like to get people to think about, is my future self down the track, right? What am I going to do today to invest in my future self? And this is where discipline starts to actually become an act of self-service, not a difficulty. When you're viewing, hey, I'm going to exercise or I'm going to eat this healthy food for my future self so I can be a better version of me, it's all of a sudden it's not a chore, and it makes it easier to do. So really, just to sum that up, it's just about thinking how you can be of benefit to your little corner of the universe. And then it's also about investing in yourself to grow and develop as a human being.
I'm glad you said that, because probably the last 2 years I started thinking life's purpose or what that means. I'm like, it's got to be some bullshit there, because I kind of was jaded by thinking, oh yeah, I've got a purpose in life, because I knew I wanted to be a soccer player so young.
Yeah.
But I've also spoken about it before. I'm like, well, it's not the fucking soccer ball that made me effective and good. It was the personality traits of what the sport maybe defines. So it's like, that's interchangeable with anything in a sense. But what I did get out of my soccer career, and you might not know, but I played professional for about 4 years, and I had a career-ending injury around 21, 22. But despite even some of the great performances that I had these massive ebbs and flows with my mentality to the game, purely based on performance. And with that, it gave me a bit of a fascination to the brain, because I didn't understand why I was holding on to things, or why, one day I played better than the other.
Yeah.
Like, I was annoyed about it and try and train harder and things like that. But it was just simple awareness of what the actual brain is. And I don't know what your view is on how kids are brought up with the education on the brain, or the lack of, I should say.
Yeah.
But I feel like if there was someone like you in a primary school or high school teaching kids about the brain, people would give more time and attention to it.
Absolutely. I think every kid should be taught about the brain and the body, and about how to actually nourish it and to look after it, right? And then how to optimize it through psychology as well, right? I think they should just be critical lessons as you're learning and developing and trying to work out, how you fit into the world. Because that's all we're trying to do, is work out, how do I fit into the world, and where's my driver, where am I going to end up, all of this sort of stuff.
Hey guys, just a quick pause in this episode to compliment our partners of the show. You guys know that I've been sponsored and supported by Dabble, the gambling agency, for a while now. This place has a special place in my heart because it is like the social network of gambling. You can follow superstars of the game, copy their bets. You might not know so much about a certain sport, but you can copy someone who does and increase your chances of winning some money. Obviously, if you're not a gambler, please only bet what you can and are willing to lose. Please dabble safely, gamble responsibly, as we always say. Just so you guys know, this year I've been taking over the streaming space at Dabble every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. Jake's Take is live. It is the wild, wild west of streaming. There's not too many sporting agencies or gambling agencies out there doing what we do. We put on a few bets throughout the show. We get some guests on. We have a lot of fun. It's all within the Dabble app. If you guys want to jump on board, the link is in the bio. Let's get back into the episode. Can you just give me we've had psychologists come on here before, and I've even spoke to a lot of people that when shit's going tough, maybe go speak to someone. But at the same time, I resonate with a lot of what you say. Well, shit can always be going tough. It's about just getting on with things and executing some of these daily habits and rituals that you've touched on, which actually help you feel better. I mean, the balance of that being told that aspect and sort of what you say, I'm not saying they're completely different, but what's your sort of viewpoint around that? Because obviously speaking to someone, constantly talking about shit, it's not that you might not need to address it, but...
Yeah, I'm quite critical of talk therapy that is not action focused, right? So people just constantly talking about their mood and being asked about their feelings and getting in touch with their feelings. If there's no action associated with that, I think it can actually make people worse, right? Because they're thinking about the bad shit. And guess what happens when you think about bad shit? Your mood gets worse, right? And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm much more interested in action-focused stuff like Japanese psychology and acceptance and commitment therapy, which is you accept that something bad has happened. You accept you're having negative emotions. The universe is just giving you a shit sandwich, but you commit to action that's aligned with your values that will help to take you towards the person that you actually want to be, right? That's the key thing. Is there's this beautiful term from Japanese psychology called arugamama. With things as they are, what needs to be done, right? So it's all action, right? It's like, what are you going to do with it? Yes, you're depressed. What are you going to do about it, right? So I'll give you a very concrete personal example of this.
Yeah.
About 3 months ago, I went to see a mate of mine who I played football with. I nearly said soccer. And then I realized I'm talking.
Even I'd tell you off for that one.
No. I play football. I'm still pretending I'm 30 years younger than I am, right? But so he's a cardiologist. And I said, mate, I want to get the full stuff done on my heart. So he says, come and see me. We'll put you through everything, right? So did the stress test, did the cardiac MRI, calcium scan, all of that. Sat down with the debrief and he said, look, your heart's in great shape physically from a fitness perspective, but we just uncovered that you have a congenital heart defect. You have a bicuspid aortic valve rather than a tricuspid. Which means that the valve after a while doesn't close and you get a bit of blood coming back in as it's getting pumped out. You get this regurgitation and it can be fatal and it can cause heart failure. So he says, at some stage, you're going to need to get open heart surgery to repair this. He says, it's not imminent that you need to get it done, but you need it sometime in the next 5 to 10 years. And the first thing that came into my head was Seneca saying, I pity the man who has had no adversity in his life because he has not faced an opponent, a worthy opponent, and no one, not even him, knows what he's capable of. So I went straight home and I wrote in my bathroom mirror, worthy opponent. And I've got a training program, right? Oh. And I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn about why I'm embracing my upcoming open heart surgery, right? So I walked out of there and I went, this is what I've trained for.
Straight away.
This is everything that I've trained for. All my military stuff, the combat survival, the ice baths, the hard exercise, it's all been to prepare me for my worthy opponent. And I'm embracing my worthy opponent to actually make me better, right? So I'm fitter now than I've been in quite a while because I'm embracing this as a challenge, right? And I could have gone, oh, woe is me, you know, heart defect, you know, why me, blah, 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 and think about all the negatives, all that's going to do is destroy my health, right? From that threat response. Or I can choose to lean in and embrace my worthy opponent. So my message to people is, who's your worthy opponent that you're actually going to embrace, right? To make you better, to give you something to fight for.
I was actually thinking that when I saw you come into, I'm like, this guy is looking fucking fit as well. I'm like, so what can you just touch on your training regime at the moment, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so it's the tweak that I've done to my training regime, and I spoke with my cardiologist to make sure that none of it's going to have a damaging effect on my heart. So I've got very minimal regurgitation at the minute.
Okay.
Right? So for me, everything's about making my heart as strong as possible and putting on a little bit of muscle, because I know that with the surgery, you're going to lose some. And in my 50s, you don't want to be losing muscle because it's really hard to get it back, right? So I've actually changed, and I haven't been a member of a gym since I owned my own gym 15 years ago, but I actually recently joined CrossFit because my thinking had been, I'm going to continue to train myself. I've got a gym in my basement. It's got everything I need. I will join a gym when I've lost the motivation to train properly myself, right? So I'm going to keep that in the locker.
Right.
And I was thinking, you know, that'll be in my 60s or whatever. But now I'm like, I need every 1%er and 5%er, right? Yeah. And my wife and kids are members of CrossFit. So I've gone there and I've been loving it. So I'm doing CrossFit 3 times a week. I'm doing another 2 strength training sessions. I'm doing a bit of zone 2 exercise, you're probably familiar with, right? That 60, 70%, which I've never done that because I've thought, go hard or go home.
Yeah, well,
right?
that military guy, and you'd be like, this isn't...
Exactly, because you have to slow down when you're doing zone 2, when you're out for a run, but it's really good for your mitochondria, right? So I'm doing that as well, and then I'm doing a session a week, the Norwegian 4x4 protocol, to get my VO2 max up, right? That's where you go.
What's the Norwegian 4x4?
So this is the most researched training intervention to improve your VO2 max, your maximum oxygen uptake. You do 4 minutes, balls out, right? On anything, you can be running, rowing, whatever. So 4 minutes. So at the end of the 4 minutes, your heart rate's up around 95% of the max, or even a little bit above. And then you recover, active recovery for 3 minutes, and you do that 4 times. Wow. So it's 4 minute, hard 4 minute intervals.
That's tough.
It's tough. It's really tough.
That is very tough.
It is, particularly the last one. It's really tough.
Yeah.
But it is the quickest way to move the needle on your VO2 max, which is the biggest predictor of how long you're going to live, but also really strengthens the heart. So I'm doing a combination of both cardio, low intensity aerobic stuff, the high intensity stuff, but I'm also doing strength training because they both have independent and synergistic effects on the heart and your overall body and your muscles and all of that. You got to think about different stressors because we react differently to different stressors. So you got to give the body different reasons to actually react and adapt and become stronger. So that's kind of my protocol now is 3 times CrossFit, a couple of training sessions, weights by myself, and then the Norwegian 4x4 and 1 or 2 of the zone 2s.
Well, I tell you what, for anyone at home listening, that's motivation enough. Open heart surgery as well. I love how you've just framed that whole thing.
Yeah, and you know what? You're going to open heart surgery. What the fuck are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You're going to sit there and feel sorry for yourself, or you're going to get yourself in. The way I'm looking at this is a fight. Right? I'm facing a worthy opponent. I used to box a little bit. Yeah. So I'm training my ass off to be in the best shape that I can for this worthy opponent, and my mindset is locked in on winning this. Yeah. I spoke to my cardiologist. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this because I said, how much time do I need to take off work? And he said 6 weeks. And I told my business manager, Penny, book me in for a talk in 3 after.
I love that.
Because I'm like, I'm recovering quick.
Yeah. I love that. You've mentioned it a few times, which probably for people at home are wondering too, but Japanese psychology, that you said your wife's...
she's a practitioner.
She's a practitioner, but just the connection and what actually is, why is that differentiated to you?
So it's called the psychology of action. Right. And so Marita therapy. So there's a couple of elements to it, Marita therapy and ICANN and a couple of other little things. But Marita is basically around people with anxiety. And he was just all about the action that they need to do. Right. And actually taking action despite how you're feeling. So let's just take somebody who's got anxiety. Let's just say we're mates. You've invited me to your party. It's a big party, 30th birthday, whatever it may be. But I've got social anxiety, right? So straight away in my head is going to go, I'm not going. No way am I going. People are going to be looking at me. They're going to be talking about me. What am I going to fit? Blah, blah, blah. It's all this negative shit. And then often that this person does an avoidance behavior, right? That's what people do when they're anxious. They often avoid the situation, which actually makes it worse over time. The best treatment for anxiety is exposure therapy, right? Now, the way that Japanese psychology and ACT, I like the way they're so aligned on this, would be to actually look at my values and actually go, yes, I'm feeling anxious, but what needs to be done? I need to support my good mate, Jake, right? And it's important for me to be a good friend, to be loyal. So I'm actually going to take my anxiety with me to the party. I'm not going to wait till it's gone. I'm going to take my anxiety with me in the service that's of something bigger, i.e. friendship and loyalty, right? And that really sums it all up, right? With things as they are, what needs to be done?
Yeah, that's fascinating. When you were saying that before, I was like, you've come up with a few quotes off it, but it comes back to your point around the talk therapy too. It's like having an action exposed to it is probably more helpful. And usually people with situations like that, anxiety, not going to party, when you go to it, it's not as bad as you think.
Never as bad as you think. So that, they did a research study on people with generalized anxiety disorder, which is pretty full on, and it's debilitating for people. And they got them to write down everything they were worried about in a journal for a month. So they filled this journal with shit, right? And then months later, they followed them up and got them to look back and go through the journal line by line to see what came true. And 91% of the shit that people worry about never came true. But think about what happens, right?
Yeah.
When people have anxiety disorder, this flashlight is in their own head. And they spend all this time in their own head, struggling with their thoughts, whether it's anxiety or depression, right? In ACT, they call it the struggle monster. I call it the gremlin, right? They're struggling with the gremlin. And all the time that they're in their own head, they're missing out on all this experience that's in the world, right? If people would just get out of their heads and into their lives by doing what needs to be done, then it'd be so much better. And look, and it sounds straightforward, but it's hard to do. It's hard to do. But I tell you what's a shitload harder is actually getting to the end of your life and realizing that you've wasted the vast majority of your life and got nowhere near your own potential because you're in your own head.
Yeah.
It's all hard, so choose your heart.
Do you think as well people, like I have this saying in my own head, like I don't want to leave potential on the table. And at times you feel you are, at times you're on track. Or particularly for me as I've sort of progressed out of soccer to almost like recreate myself as a functional operative human outside of the sport.
Yeah.
So I've had the ebbs and flows of that. But what's your sort of stance with people that, do people sort of ruminate on that in itself and not actually do anything about it?
Absolutely. Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, that's
right?
the saying, right?
But what you have done now is you've embraced a worthy opponent of your own.
Yeah,
right?
Fuck yeah.
You've gone, shit, my career's gone. All of those dreams from a kid. You think about how many hours that you put into soccer. You think about how much of your whole cognitive resources were on that. Your future was on that. You were living your best life, and then boom, shit happened. A shit sandwich from the universe.
Yeah.
There was no fault of yours, and now boom, your life's in tatters. So what are you going to do? Are you going to feel sorry for yourself and be the victim and ruminate and talk about one of these people who talks about their past lives and how good they were?
Yeah.
Or are you going to embrace that worthy opponent and do what needs to be done to create your own path? Yeah. And you've embraced your worthy opponent.
Well, I will say, though, it did take me about 4 or 5 years, so I can't sit here on my high horse and say I was acting straight away. I was sitting there thinking, what the fuck, for a period of time.
Isn't it unfortunate that some people need to hit absolute rock bottom before they do what needs to be done, right?
Why do you think that is in the humanity, in a sense? Because it seems like people say, oh, sometimes rock bottom's good because you can only go up. But it's like, do you really have to go to rock bottom to do that?
You don't have to go to rock bottom. I think what people need in those situations is they need some help. And this is where we used to be members of a tribe.
Yeah.
And it's this breakdown of the tribe that has caused an issue. And even the breakdown of religion. I'm not religious. I'm a recovering Catholic from Northern Ireland. But religion has all of those structures around people and the morals and the values and stuff like that, which we can recreate, right? But just having people around to help them, to nudge them in the right direction, to give them a bit of empathy and a bit of comfort and an arm around the shoulder, but also to help them to then take action and not to sit and wallow in their self-pity, right? That's the key thing is people often need somebody around them who is a little bit of an inspiration or gives them a kick up the arse to just get into motion. Yeah. Because here's the thing, most people, or not most people, that's a bit unfair. A lot of people are sitting around waiting for the motivation fairy, right? To come along and give them a big dollop of motivation and then they'll get started. Yeah. Here's what we now know from a whole heap of neuroscience experiments is that dopamine is released in the brain. This is the chemical of action and goal-directed behavior and motivation. It is released in the brain when it knows that you're in forwards motion towards a goal. So you want the motivation fairy to come? Start acting. Yeah. Get in forwards motion, right? And I like to use a concept called a ritual board, where you write down all the behaviors that you're going to do, right? Gotcha. And they can be like physical stuff like exercise, nutrition, good sleep hygiene, gratitude, which I think is really important. And tick those things off, right? Set yourself targets and then tick them off as you do them. Because this board, if you stick it in your kitchen or your bathroom mirror, whatever, it becomes a trigger, a visual trigger to get you to remind you to do the behavior, because a lot of people just need that, right? But it also becomes a feedback mechanism that I'm in forwards motion towards a goal, which then releases more dopamine and more motivation, right? Gotcha. Motivation follows action, not the other way around. Yeah. And it doesn't follow talk therapy, it follows action.
Yeah. It's almost, I mean, I think you may have spoken of this way, but life very much is, in some regards, a fight, because you've got to throw some punches for something to actually start eventuating, right?
This is what I think we should tell every child. Yeah. Right? We should tell every child, life is amazing, but it's also hard. And sometimes you need to fight like mad, right? Yeah. You can't sit and feel sorry for yourself. You need to do a hard winter training, as Epictetus said, right? You need to get yourself fit. You need to fuel your body. You need to train your mind so that you will be able to overcome those adversities. Because when you overcome those adversities in your life, that is the biggest boon to your self-confidence, your self-esteem, and your motivation to do other stuff, right? If people think about the stuff that they are most proud of, I guarantee you for 95% of the audience, it involves stress and being out of their comfort zone. Yeah. And I like to ask people, do you want to be sitting on your deathbed, looking back on your life and saying, that was an easy life, a life of comfort? Or do you want to say, that was a life that I could be proud of? Because if it's the latter, then you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You need to do a hard winter training, and you need to lean into adversity with the right attitude.
So you're very exercise is paramount based off just the studies of what you've done.
Yeah, just because two things, Jake, is number one, the just outrageous impact that it has on your physiology, right? Not only does it release awesome neurotransmitters in your brain, but it actually improves the function of every single organ in your body through things called myokines, which people can look up, right? But exercise also attenuates or reduces every single one of the hallmarks of aging, right? So it is the best investment you'll make in yourself. But another thing that's really critical, exercise grows volume in your frontal lobes, especially the area in the frontal lobes to do with willpower and self-control, right? And a big study that's come out of what's called the Dunedin study in New Zealand. This kind of follows the work of an old famous study called the Marshmallow Study from Walter Mischel. But this Dunedin study has shown, by following people in New Zealand for 40 years, the single biggest predictor of success in life, nothing to do with your income or your educational level, it's self-control. Yeah. That is the single biggest predictor of success in life. Because let's think about this from you're a kid. Good self-control makes you go to class and not mitch off school when you're mitching off school, even if you're in low socioeconomic status. Good self-control makes you work hard and do your homework so that you get good results in your exams, right? Then good self-control helps you to either get a trade if you end up in TAFE or to get into university and to work hard at university. And then when you get a job, self-control gets you to work hard so that the boss notices you so you'll get promoted, right? It's just, there's so much stuff that comes off self-control, and exercise is what's known as a gateway behavior. It opens the gates to other healthy behaviors. So we see that people, when they regularly exercise, if they got a shithouse life, right, in terms of their health, they eat shit food, they drink, they smoke, whatever. If they can do an exercise program for 3 to 6 months, all the research shows they will start to adopt other healthy behaviors, right? And it's because their areas for self-control have become stronger. So you can now say no to the unhealthy food, reduce your alcohol, reduce your smoking, or even quit and do those other things.
All right, because people tend to, and I was victim of this past soccer with sort of the self-control aspect, but particularly when I had soccer, and this is what I wanted to ask you around, kind of people saying when they have a purpose, they have a better self-control because it's like, well, they've got a reason to say no. What do you say to that for the people that, I'm not necessarily shooting for something at the moment. I haven't found that. So, they don't have that self-control, because I feel like you'd have not a polarizing view, but a very painted black and white answer to that.
What I'm very clear on is your future self.
Yeah.
Right? And getting serious about your future self, right? Because that's the goal that you're investing in, right? So every time I'm exercising and it's friggin' hard, I'm actually saying I'm investing in my future self, right? Because you've got this one body to get you through. And by eating healthily, sleeping well, all of that, you're making your future self better. And I actually like to say to people, how do you want to live out your retirement? Right? What do you want to be doing in your retirement? I want to be traveling. I want to be playing with my grandkids. I want to be active. I want to be doing sport. I want to be the last person in the gym, not the first person in the retirement home, right? So if you think about that, I actually get, and this is really good for your viewers and listeners, is to write a letter from their future selves to them right now. So you'd write a letter from, and it doesn't have to be retirement, but let's just say we pick retirement. You're 80-year-old Jake, and you go, hey, Jake, 30-year-old or whatever you are now, I am 80 years old and I'm living an amazing retirement, right? I'm taking my grandkids to soccer, helping them with their skills. I'm playing golf, I'm traveling, I've got great relationships, blah, blah, blah. And you list all the things that you want to be doing. You say, for this to be a reality, here's what I now need you to do. On a daily, weekly basis, I need you to invest in your future version of you and list out the stuff that people are struggling with, right? Like eating healthy, exercising, those sorts of things. Because the research shows the more that you can visualize your future self, the bigger impact it has on your current behavior.
I love that. I'm actually going to do that. That's a great exercise.
It's really cool.
It kind of gives you no reason to not achieve what you want, because you're telling yourself what it is.
Yeah. And then when you're struggling, it's like, okay, this is hard. What would my sage do right now?
That's a good point. I actually should have asked this at the start, because this is equally for me as the listeners, but Neuroscientist, can you just break down, I guess, why you wanted to have that sort of title and that avenue of interest, but what it actually entails as well?
Yeah. So when I first came to Australia, I set up as a physiologist and nutritionist, right? At Harper's Personal Training. I'm still good mates with Craig. I had my business in there. And I was working with lots of clients, and then I realized after a while, it's not about telling people what to do and giving them all this really good scientific advice. It's really about behavior change and helping people with behavior change. So I went off and I studied social neuroscience, which is really about how the brain works and interacts with people, and it's real functional stuff, because I wanted to know, how can we help people to change their own behavior and to get out of their own way, right? Because a lot of people are just in their own friggin' way. And half of it's because they're in their own bloody heads, right? Yeah. And so for me, that was the really critical thing, was understanding how the brain works and how motivation works and all of those things so that you could then tap into it, right? And now I'm doing my PhD in psychology because that's a slightly different lens. And for me, it's the last piece in the jigsaw.
All right, there you go. I do want to touch on just the nutrition side a bit more because we kind of skimmed over it and you made some really good points about it. But just for some listeners at home, equally with your book, which we'll put the link to it in our bio. So if anyone wants to get Death by Comfort by Paul, make sure you get it. But some of the books, you've mentioned a couple things and particularly individuals, but some books that have changed your life that for those out there that are keen on sort of following suit, what you'd recommend.
For me, anything around Stoic philosophy,
right?
I actually think that everybody should be brought up on a diet of Stoicism, right? Because that was the first ever philosophy that was preached to the masses. And they were dealing with the same problems that we're dealing with 2,000 years ago, but they thought deeply about them and they had awesome stuff. So anything from Ryan Holiday is good. The Daily Stoic's a great starter, but he's got lots of. Donald Robertson, he's brilliant, Scottish guy and a bona fide philosopher himself who's written How to Think Like a Roman Emperor and a whole heap of other stuff. Jonas Salzgeber, the little book of Stoicism is great. And then there's another one called Breakfast with Seneca, which is very cool, right? And then I highly recommend everybody reads the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Is this the one you read at 17?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went through Auschwitz and was one of the few to survive, right? And really, it's all about existentialism, and it's just hugely important for people. I think reading that book will give you a really good grounding on things.
Oh, I love that. Oh, brilliant. Just into the nutrition side, and I think you break down processed foods into different categories.
Yeah.
And you've gone through a lot of, you can probably share, but some of the Western countries where the processed nature of what we eat is significantly high. I think you have what you said was real ingredients are not in foods.
No, real foods aren't ingredients. Yeah. Real food is ingredients.
Correct. Right? And I love that. And I thought that's an easy way to simplify what you're trying to, your message.
Absolutely. So I've been talking about the low HI diet for many, many years. I think it was John Tickell who first came up with it, but I love it.
What is that?
Human interference. It's the thing. Look at a piece of food and if you can go, has that grown out of the ground, come off a bush or a tree, run around on 2 or 4 legs or swam recently and be minimally interfered with by humans? If the answer is yes, eat it. It's fine. Don't worry about the bloody fat, the carbs, the protein. But it's like I said with a Krispy Kreme donut or a protein bar, have you seen that running around on 4 legs? Mm. If the answer is no, it's generally an ultra-processed food. So Nova classification of foods came out of the University of Brazil and it's brilliant. So level food category 1 is the low HI stuff that has obviously been alive. All your fresh fruit and vegetables, meat, fish, stuff, nuts, seeds, all of that stuff. Then category 2, they talk about the stuff you use to cook with, spices, herbs, cooking oils, those sorts of things. Then category 3 is processed foods, but not much processing, which is fine in your diet. Things like canned fish, canned vegetables, things like yogurt, full fat yogurt, not low fat because that means full of sugar, right? Mm-hmm. And things like cheese and stuff like that. And artisan bread, like a sourdough artisan from an artisan, that is like a different species to supermarket breads, right?
Yeah.
Completely different species.
In a good way?
In a good way, right? Supermarket breads are, so a sourdough bread will take 24, 36 hours. And it's the fermentation of the sourdough that provides a preservative. Here's a great little trick for people to do. Get an artisan bread, sourdough loaf and cut a square out of it and go and buy a supermarket loaf and cut a square out of it and stick both of them individually in the roof of your mouth and just leave it there. That supermarket bread will be gone in less than a minute, dissolved. And the sourdough bread, you'll be peeling it off the top of your mouth 5 minutes later, right? That shows you what happens inside your body, right? This stuff, the supermarket breads, particularly white breads, and even some of the homemade breads, it's just essentially a form of sugar, right? But here's the thing. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Mexico, United Kingdom, and the United States are the 6th worst countries for ultra-processed food consumption in the world, right? all of those countries, more than 50% of the food that's eaten is ultra-processed crap, right? Yeah. The last data we had was 2008, it was 42% in this country. But we know from sales, we're right up with the UK. In the UK and the United States, recently they looked at teenagers' diets. 66% of everything they eat is ultra-processed shit. Why is this a problem? A big review, what's called an umbrella review, where they review reviews, so this is the best form of observational evidence you get, showed class 1 evidence that increasing ultra-processed foods in your diet, so class 1 is highly convincing evidence, increases cardiovascular deaths by 50%, anxiety by 48%, and common mental health disorders by 53%.
Jesus.
This stuff should have health warnings all over it. And look, there's stuff that's pretty obvious for people, right? Chocolate, crisps, cookies, all of those things, obvious. Things like hot dogs, burgers, impossible meat. People know this stuff's ultra-processed, right? Donuts, cakes, all of that. But things that surprise people are breakfast cereals, supermarket breads, and store-bought fruit juice, right? And then things like protein bars and these things that have a health halo, which is actually just ultra-processed shit. Yeah. And it's the combination of things like lots of ingredients, emulsifiers that make them feel amazing in the mouth, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors, and also preservatives that we now know completely disrupt your microbiome. And if you disrupt people's microbiome, like I could take an unhealthy person who has diabetes or obesity and give you a fecal transplant. Do you know what a fecal transplant is? You get a bit of their poo and you get it in a big syringe and you stick it up your jacksie like that, right? And what this does is it repopulates your colon with their crap and their bacteria, right? And what we know is that if you get the bacteria of somebody who's had depression, you'll develop depression.
Wow.
Or you'll develop obesity or diabetes from that. There's animal studies after animal studies shows that that's the case. And now human studies accidentally, where they realize somebody got a fecal transplant, became obese or depressed, they go and they find a donor and realize that person was obese or depressed. And we're now seeing fecal transplants can cure people of autoimmune conditions and all sorts of crazy stuff. So our microbiome is hugely important. You have more cells in your body for bacteria than you have for yourself. So this microbiome is to be treasured. And when we eat ultra-processed foods and processed carbohydrates and sugars, we destroy our microbiome.
Oh my God. That's quite a lot to take in as well. Because it's pretty much everywhere in the supermarket. I'd argue in 90% of
the middle, right?
Yeah, the middle aisle, that's a death aisle.
Next time, for your viewers, go into the supermarket. All the reasonable stuff's around the outside. The death aisles, I love that. They're in the middle. That's where all the ultra-processed shit is.
Oh my God. Have you heard of a guy called Jesse Itzler?
No, I haven't.
So he's probably one of my favorite entrepreneurs or people in the world. He created like the first coconut water. He had, what else did he do? He had a private jet company without owning any of the jets in America. Okay. And he married this lady who was founder of Spanx. But anyway, he's not really an athlete, but he runs 100-mile races, to challenge himself mentally. And he's very, very big on the diet. He's got this thing, fruit before noon, but he's offered up $1 million to like these cereal chain CEOs just to come and have a 30-minute chat with him so he can kind of pick him apart. And none of them have ever taken the deal.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, for all the things that you said, because all the kids that are eating these processed type foods, which we all kind of grew up on eating, and probably in that generation where it was like no one really gave a shit about it. It was Cocoa Pops was maybe not good for you, but cornflakes was great.
Yeah. Do you know what? Do you know the first breakfast here was cornflakes?
Was it really?
Do you know where they came from?
No.
Seventh-day Adventists, right? This is true. Okay. This will blow your mind, okay. Right? Seventh-day Adventists who thought that too much protein caused masturbation and was a sin. And so they developed a low-protein breakfast so that people would masturbate less and sin less. That's where cornflakes came from.
Oh my God. And that's still
true.
paramount in our diet somewhat today.
That's where it came from.
How does that make?
Stop masturbation.
Cornflake. I did not know that.
Imagine
there you go.
sticking that on the box now. Eat cornflakes and masturbate
You'd
less.
see grown men just sliding it into their trolley probably. Yeah, no, that's hilarious. I just kind of want to summarize.
They should advertise on Pornhub.
Yeah, that'll prevent its viewership, I'm sure. Just kind of to summarize, because we did get through a lot, and I'm conscious, as much as I've taken out of today, and I'm sure even Braden listening there probably has, but for the listeners at home, just want to summarize like to people kind of what we went through here, because I think it's fair to say that everyone kind of has some shit going on at different points of their life, but there are some principles and some actions and some disciplines that with consistency can help alleviate that straight away.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your actual sort of, I'd say, your main remedy to it as well, which kind of contradicts some of the Western side of or philosophy around going and talking to people about all your stuff. But just to go through some of those daily habits that you touched on, because I think, I don't know if we harped on that enough, but I think that's the quickest way for people to feel better.
So for me, trying to exercise in the morning is really important for two reasons. Number one, it'll turn your brain into a high-performance machine all day long. And number two, you do it in the morning, that shit gets done, right? Because we've all had the best intentions of exercising later. And even if it's just a short 5-minute intense workout, just do something in the morning, right? Just do something for yourself. Come back, have a shower, turn it to cold for 30 seconds and breathe through it. Long, slow, deep breathing, right? Now you've set yourself up really well. Eat a good breakfast, right? Have at least 2 of those 3 meals that are home cooked and limit the amount of ultra-processed poison that you're putting into your body because you need to nourish yourself. And I like to also, and this is what I need to get better at, my wife is brilliant at it, is to just get up in the morning and journal for a couple of minutes and actually go, who do I want to be today, right? Yeah, am I going to be my sage or am I going to be my gremlin? Right? What values, what behaviors do I want to do today? So set out your day with intention, right? And then when you go into work, as you're walking into work, ask yourself, how would my sage walk into work, right? And what we know is your energy affects the brain chemistry of every single person that you interact with. So why not do it in a positive manner, right? So actually go in there and be positive energy and see what else shit starts to come towards you, what good stuff, if you are a positive energy. And the other thing I think is just be curious. Be curious about people who piss you off, rather than friggin' be a victim and woe is me and that person's made me angry. Be curious about what might be driving them to behave the way that they behave, right? So that curiosity, and also be curious about the world, right? And I think just having regular gratitude, right? You're on public transport, you're thinking, oh, this is shit, but then think, fucking hell, public transport, how cool is that shit, right?
Better than walking.
Wheels, right? Who fucking hell? Who invented a wheel? Electricity. Just get curious about the world and look for awe, right? Like turn a light on sometimes and go, fucking hell.
I've heard you speak about gratitude, and people, if they're struggling for gratitude, just switch off the electricity for a day.
This is it. If you can't feel gratitude, go without running water for a day. I guarantee you'll love it. Sleep on the floor. This is what the Stoics used to say. Sleep on the floor. Then you really appreciate your bed, right? So having those regular acts of gratitude, being a positive influence on people, actually going, how can I actually help somebody today, right? How can I be a good human being? Forget about all the other stuff. Just go out there and be good, right? See what happens if you start to look after your body, if you start to nourish your body and you start to nourish your mind with gratitude and good acts for other people, right? And then when you get in your own head, actually ask yourself, what would my sage do right now and what needs to be done? If people just follow that, and then when they come home, have some good sleep hygiene, turn the fucking TV off, right? And sit down and read a book, read some Stoic philosophy or something inspiring that will make you be a better human, right? And if you just do those things, those basic principles, see what happens. try and experiment. And you know, the other thing I would say to people, I'm a massive fan of this. I had for quite a while memento mori written on my bathroom mirror, right? I got it from Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, who in his personal diary, which you can buy, it's called Meditations. It's a copy of his personal diary. Numerous occasions he says to himself, Marcus, memento mori. That bit translates as remember death. And he said, remember that you are mortal, that you could die at any moment. And he said, remember that, Marcus, not to be morose, but to remind yourself that life is a precious gift. And you should wake up every day with extreme gratitude just to be alive. Now, I can pretty much guarantee you that if your viewers write memento mori on their bathroom mirror, right? And every morning you wake up and you look at that and you go, how fucking lucky am I to be alive? It is a game changer. Psychologically, it changes everything. And amongst it all, it changes I have to I get to. I have to do this hard stuff. I have to interact with this dickhead to I get to do those things because I'm alive, right? And it had such a big impact on me that it's no longer written on my bathroom mirror because it's now inked on me forever.
There you go.
So that every day I remember how fucking lucky I am to be alive.
I was just thinking, what a fucking great tattoo idea that is as well. there you go.
Boom. And actually, I've done talks and I talk about this, and 4 people in the last year have come up to me at the end of it and showed me their memento mori tattoo.
Oh my
Different
God.
guises, but same thing. And I'm like, that's awesome.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, we have actually a podcast question we run with that. We always attest kind of 3 key traits to success in any format of life, right?
Yeah.
And it can be something as basic as just taking care of your corner of the world, as you touched on. But we kind of attest sort of the 3 traits as resilience, drive, and ambition. I think you kind of somewhat need all 3 to, you know, particularly from an athlete's point of view or in the business world, for example. But what one has sort of been a cornerstone for you through your life, the military or your studies, how you present and how you sort of activate yourself every day?
It is deliberately doing hard stuff.
Yeah.
I think that is important physiologically so that you adapt, but it's also important psychologically. It's that hard winter training from Epictetus. You do hard stuff, and then when the shit sandwich comes from the universe, you're prepared to deal with it like my open heart surgery. Yeah. When you embrace your worthy opponent.
Which that is a one hell of a story, by the way. Which best of luck, and I don't even think you need it. I mean, the way you, but it's on your fridge as a worthy opponent, which is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Luck is for the unprepared.
Yeah, I love that. Hey guys, I got to think we're going to finish on that note. But Paul Taylor, incredible individual. Hopefully, you guys took something out of today. We will also, as I mentioned in the bio, go and get his book, Death by Comfort. If you found this interesting, which I'm sure you would have if you've made it here, definitely get the book, have a read, and why not be your best selves? We'll see you next week.
And the Paul Taylor podcast.
The Paul Taylor. Wait, let's plug that right now. Where's that at? Is that out?
Yeah. That's out.
We'll put a link into that as well, guys. So make sure you have it. But yeah, what an individual, guys. We hope you enjoyed that one. We'll see you next week.
Go get shit done.
As you touched on, but we kind of attest sort of the 3 traits as resilience, drive, and ambition. I think you kind of somewhat need all 3 to, you know, particularly from an athlete's point of view or in the business world, for example. But what one has sort of been a cornerstone for you through your life, the military or your studies, how you present and how you sort of activate yourself every day?
It is deliberately doing hard stuff.
Yeah.
I think that is important physiologically so that you adapt, but it's also important psychologically. It's that hard winter training from Epictetus. You do hard stuff, and then when the shit sandwich comes from the universe, you're prepared to deal with it like my open heart surgery. Yeah. When you embrace your worthy opponent. Which that is a one hell of a story, by the way. Which best of luck, and I don't even think you need it. I mean, the way but it's on your fridge as a worthy opponent, which is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Luck is for the unprepared. Yeah, I love that. Hey guys, I got to think we're going to finish on that note. But Paul Taylor, incredible individual. Hopefully, you guys took something out of today. We will also, as I mentioned in the bio, go and get his book, Death by Comfort. If you found this interesting, which I'm sure you would have if you've made it here, definitely get the book, have a read, and why not be your best selves? We'll see you next week. And the Paul Taylor podcast. The Paul Taylor. Wait, let's plug that right now. Where's that at? Is that out? Yeah. That's out. We'll put a link into that as well, guys. So make sure you have it. But yeah, what an individual, guys. We hope you enjoyed that one. We'll see you next week. Go get shit done.